Hi, boys and girls. It's me, Mrs. Whitaker. We're going to read a really fun story today called Cinderella Penguin or the Little Glass Flipper. It's by Janet Perlman. She also did all the pictures, so she is the writer and the illustrator. So let's read this fun story together. There once was a young penguin named Cinderella, who lived in a faraway land with her stepmother and two stepsisters. Cinderella was a kind and gentle penguin, but her stepsisters were selfish and vain. Cinderella did all the chores. They even had her pick up after her stepsisters while they didn't have to do a thing. Oh, there's poor Cinderella Penguin. Her stepmom and her stepsisters, they even have mean looks on their faces. I don't think I like them. The sisters wore the finest of clothes and slept in large, cozy feather beds with silk sheets and fluffy pillows. Poor Cinderella wore nothing but worn-out tatters and slept in the cold stone cellar up on a small shelf beside some old tin plates. Poor Cinderella Penguin sleeping on that shelf. She's in the cellar. That's another word for basement. One day it was announced that the Penguin Prince was giving a costume ball. The stepsisters and their mother received an invitation. Cinderella wanted to go too, but they just laughed at her. The prince would never want to meet a shabby cinder block like you. For weeks, the house was filled with talk of the ball. The sisters had costumes made from the finest fabrics. They ate only the tiniest meals so they could have the tiniest waists, and they were always in front of the mirror, posing and practicing their curtsies. Finally, the night of the ball arrived. Cinderella rushed about, ironing her stepsisters' costumes and helping them dress. Then, without a thank you or a goodbye, the carriage swept the stepmother and stepsisters off to the ball. Cinderella Penguin burst into tears. She felt so alone and unhappy. Oh, she's crying. Suddenly, in the glow of blue light, the great fairy penguin appeared before her. "Why are you crying, Cinderella? Do you want to go to the ball?" she asked. Cinderella Penguin blinked back her tears. "Oh, yes, I do, more than anything." "Then you shall." "First," said the fairy penguin, "you must fetch me a pumpkin from the garden." Cinderella didn't know how a pumpkin could help her get to the ball, but she quickly brought one of her best pumpkins to the fairy. The fairy gave it a firm tap with her wand, and it magically turned into a beautiful golden carriage. Then the great fairy penguin went into the kitchen and found 6 mice carrying a huge chunk of cheese. With a tap of her wand, they turned into a handsome team of 6 horses. She turned the cheese into a fat coachman in uniform. They all marched out the door and took their places as if it were the most natural thing to do. "Now you can go to the ball. Are you happy, Cinderella?" asked the fairy. "Oh, yes," said Cinderella. But then she looked sadly down at her ragged clothes. I wonder what's going to happen next. Can you make a guess about what is going to happen on the next page? Oh, I have my guess. Let's see if I'm right. "Oh, I almost forgot," said the fairy, and with a tap of her wand, Cinderella Penguin's rags became a beautiful gown with gold trim and a real gold tiara, and on her feet were a pair of glass flippers, the prettiest and most delicate that Cinderella Penguin had ever seen. "Now, one last thing," the great fairy penguin said. "The magic spell ends at the stroke of midnight. The carriage will turn back into a pumpkin, the horses back into mice, and the coachman will turn into cheese. And you will again be dressed in rags, so you must leave the ball before midnight." Cinderella promised to remember. Then, waving goodbye, she stepped into the carriage and rode off, her heart filled with joy. I was right about my guess, boys and girls. I guessed that the fairy penguin would make Cinderella look very pretty before she left. And I was totally right. Were you right too? When Cinderella arrived at the palace, the ball was in full swing. She was welcomed with a fanfare of trumpets, and she marveled to see so many fine penguins wearing such magnificent costumes. Her stepmother and stepsisters didn't notice her at all. They were too busy gobbling down snacks and party sandwiches at the buffet tables. But then the Penguin Prince noticed Cinderella at once. "Who is she?" he asked his courtiers. "She's the most beautiful penguin I've ever seen." Cinderella had never met as handsome and charming a penguin as the prince. From their first dance together, he never left her side. They whirled and twirled around the dance floor to the applause of the admiring crowd. "Who is the beautiful young penguin who has captured the prince's attention so completely?" everyone whispered. "What a handsome couple! How well they dance together," they sighed. Cinderella had never been so happy. She wished the night could last forever. Then suddenly she glanced up at the clock. In all the excitement, she had completely forgotten the fairy's warning. "Oh no," she cried. "It's almost midnight. I have to go." And she ran from the palace in such a hurry that one of her glass flippers was left lying on the steps. As Cinderella rode away in the carriage, the prince called out, "Oh no, please don't go." But she was gone. He picked up the glass flipper and said sadly, "Who was she? I don't even know her name." The next day, it was announced that the prince would marry the penguin whose foot fit in that little glass flipper left lying on the stairs. There was great excitement throughout the land. First, all of the princesses tried it on, and then all the penguins of the court, but the flipper was too small for all of them. The royal footmen were commanded to take the flipper from house to house. The stepsisters spent the whole day perfuming and powdering their feet. "Cinderella," said the stepmother, "your clothes are too ragged to even be seen by the royal footmen. Go downstairs and polish the silver until they leave." "Oh, please, I would like to try the flipper too," said Cinderella Penguin, knowing that it was going to fit her perfectly. The stepsisters laughed, and then they looked down at Cinderella's webbed feet. That was the first time they noticed how delicate and tiny they were. A knock came to the front door. "Quick, quick, hide her," said the stepsisters. They grabbed Cinderella and threw her down the cellar steps and slammed the door shut. Poor Cinderella Penguin. She lay upside down with her foot caught tight, unable to get free. When the footmen came in, the stepsisters pushed and shoved to be the first to try on the flipper. They were so intent on snatching the flipper from each other that it slipped their grasp, flipped high in the air, and landed squarely on Cinderella's foot. Everyone stared and gasped. "Oh, it was a perfect fit." As the footman opened the door and helped Cinderella up, the great fairy penguin appeared. With a tap of her magic wand, she transformed Cinderella's tattered rags into the magnificent clothes she had worn to the ball. Cinderella was overjoyed. "Oh, thank you, fairy penguin. I thank you with all of my heart." The stepmothers and stepsisters' beaks dropped wide open. They looked at Cinderella, sputtering with amazement. Look! Oh my! It's her! Oh no! Oh dear, we've really put our foot in it now." The Penguin Prince and Cinderella Penguin were married the very next day, and the wedding bells rang throughout the land. Never before could anyone remember such a joyous and happy wedding. I like the castle is pink. Cinderella and the prince truly loved each other, and they lived happily ever after. Aw, look, they had a bunch of penguin kids. Looks like maybe they have more of those eggs right there, too. All right, so I hope you enjoyed our penguin story, Cinderella Penguin by Janet Perlman. This is a book that I do have in my library, so if you enjoyed reading this book and you would like to get this next time you come and see me, you just let me know and I'll show you right where I have it. I have lots of other penguin books as well, so if that's something you're interested in, you can let me know. That's all today from your friendly neighborhood librarian. I will see you next week. Bye, boys and girls.